Hey everyone, good afternoon, good morning, depending on when you're watching this. My name is Shawn Casemore, and here with another 10-minute sales multiplier. Now, just let me share with you briefly that this was actually recorded about 2 hours before the live, simply because I had another commitment I had to get to. So appreciate your patience. I still wanted to make sure I brought this strategy to you. And of course, as always, you can feel free to comment below and I'll pick up your comment, or you can contact me directly with any topics you'd like to make sure I discuss in future episodes. You can just reach out to info@ShawnCasemore.com. That said, let's talk about getting referrals from your prospects. Now, if you're a top sales performer, this strategy will come not really as a surprise to you, but I find for many, the statistics show what we've always known. Referrals are something that are highly effective if we're trying to sell. Problem is, a lot of us don't ask for referrals on a regular basis. And when we do ask, if we do ask, we ask in a very vague or general way. So, for example, when do we typically ask? It's when we hear a positive comment. And that's not a bad thing, but just because you're not getting positive comments does not mean you shouldn't be asking for a referral. So that's kind of a basic rule. The second thing I want you to consider is that when it comes to getting referrals, how we ask matters more than anything else. Meaning a vague question, hey, do you know somebody that might appreciate our service or our product, is going to get you a vague answer. Sure, I know somebody, let me think about it. And then what happens, right? Nothing happens. So what you want to make sure you do, and what I covered in my latest book, The Sales Multiplier Formula, is exactly how to ask, when you can ask, the frequency you can ask. In fact, Chapter 8, you'll see here, actually talks all about generating what I refer to as unstoppable referrals, which is the point of asking your prospects for referrals. It's one of the strategies I discuss and what I wanted to share with you today. So here it is. Let's get to it. When you're connecting with a prospect, you want to make sure that you mention to them that at some point, if the relationship and the conversations continue, you'll be asking them if there's someone they know. And this is where you want to be more descriptive, but I'll keep it general for our purposes. If they know somebody similar to themselves, similar title, similar type of company, that's maybe non-compete, that they believe you might be able to help. So early on in a prospect conversation, you simply mention, and here's what it looks like conversationally. Hey, Susan, I really appreciate these conversations. Something I should mention is that as things progress and as our conversations progress, there'll probably come a time at which I'll ask you for a referral. What that might look like is I may ask you to connect with somebody in your network, similar title, and in a similar industry to yourself that you think we might help. But I realize you're probably not really sure how we can help yet. So let's continue, right? So I can squeeze that into that conversation. In fact, it should be part of your agenda of things you do discuss with your prospect. And then as the conversation continues, but before you close the business, you'll come back several more times. So we've talked about the first time. Here's the second time you place the ask. It's before you get to putting together the proposal. So this is not right before you give them a proposal. This is after you've had a fairly in-depth discovery dialogue. You understand their needs. You've built more trust. You would mention a second time. Do you recall, Susan, that earlier on I mentioned about a referral? Not sure if anybody's come to mind since then. And then you wait to see if they say, you know what, somebody has. If they say, no, I really haven't given it some thought. So let me just be a little more descriptive on who I'm looking to work with and the kind of companies we can help. Then you describe them very briefly. Shouldn't be more than a 30-second statement. Title, size of company, location. And then you suggest, if you can think of someone, the easiest way to make a connection is simply to send an email to introduce us, or I could simply contact them and just let you know that we've had some conversations. Which is your preference? Right? So you can give them some options then for how they make the connection. There's a chance at that point they'll give you a referral, but if not, you go for level 3. Level 3 is as you're about to provide them a proposal. So now you've agreed that the next step is the quote or the next step is the proposal, depending on what you're selling. And before sending it, you say, oh, one more thing. As you go through this, I think it's going to become clear the value and benefit to working with us, or the value and benefit to partnering with us. Again, depending on what you sell and your language you use. I've mentioned a couple times now about a referral. Have you given it any further thought? Wait to see what they say. If they say no, say, well, I'm going to send you some information that probably better describes the kind of companies we can best support. I'll send that along. What's the best way to reach you with that? Would it be email? They say yes. You say, great. I'm going to have the proposal, or I'm going to have the quote to you by whatever, Friday at 8 a.m. I'll send that email along as well in the meantime. And then you send an email or a text message, whatever their preference is, social media message, that just describes what you would have said earlier. We partner with executives in the technology sector of companies between 50 to 500 million in sales, or 100 to 300 employees, again, whatever your descriptor is of your ideal prospect, and would love if you could connect us, and you simply put that into this communication. So by putting it in writing and putting it in front of them, you really bring it to life. You have to go back and realize that people consume information in different ways. So in your presentations to prospects, you want to make sure you're discussing with them, because they might be audible and what you say makes sense to them. You also want to make sure you give examples. You give maybe some slides, some visuals, some pictures, right? Because some people are visual. So for them to see the benefits of working with you, to see the value you bring is important. And last but not least, kinesthetic is hands-on. By asking for referrals in these different ways, especially early on in the conversation, you're achieving several things. By asking in different ways, we're tapping into the preferred communication style of those that we're speaking with. So I might ask you several times for a referral, and it might go nowhere because you're more of a kinesthetic hands-on person, where what I might do is go up to you at an event, say, hey, it's good to see you, John. Who's this you're speaking with, right? And I actually make the introduction myself. That's kinesthetic hands-on. But you can also use written opportunities where you summarize, as we're saying, right before the proposal or as that process is happening, you send them for something in writing relative to the referral, that you're looking for. If that doesn't get you what you need, the last step is as you're closing. So you're having a closing call, a closing meeting, maybe to review the proposal or quote. If you know my model, it is that you book that call or meeting prior to sending the proposal. And in that meeting or that discussion, you simply mention again, hey, did you receive the email? Have you given it any further thought? And if they say, no, I really haven't given it any thought, then you start to push a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit, and say, well, what would be a good time to follow up? I know you're busy. Would it make sense if we give it a week for you to give it some thought? I'll follow up. What does next Tuesday look like? So what I want you to notice, and I want to address one more thing before we wrap up, I'm doing this in parallel with my proposal. Now, you might think, well, Shawn, that just detracts them. That's taking before we've actually secured the business. But you have to realize something. Depending on your closing ratio, you want to get a referral from everyone. If this client or if this company or this individual, whoever you're selling to, if they're actually interested in buying from you, ultimately you making this ask on a couple of occasions, as long as you're not too direct and you're adding value in return, right, all along the journey of the prospect, they're not going to have a problem. The worst case you may get, you know what, if we decide to work with you, then we'll give you a referral. You say, that's fantastic. I'm looking forward to working with you. I suspect we'll be started by April 1st, so I'll put a reminder in my calendar, right? A little bit of humor to secure that. But ultimately, you're not taking the focus off the quote or proposal that you're sharing. What you are doing is reaffirming in their minds the importance of a referral to you, which means if you don't get the business, if for some reason they decide not to move ahead with you, you've planted the seed for referral. And that, my friends, is a very simple 4-step process to generating referrals from your prospects. If you want more in-depth information, as mentioned earlier, you can grab a copy of my latest book, now available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, every place, can't even speak today, every place that great books are sold. And Chapter 8 covers a variety of ways to generate referrals for your selling success. So hope you've enjoyed that. Another one of our 10-minute sales multipliers. Appreciate you joining me. Looking forward to seeing you, or at least speaking with you again next Monday. If you've got topics you'd like me to discuss, send me an email, info@ShawnCasemore.com. We'll make sure we get back to you and address that in a future 10-minute sales multiplier. And until next time, let's get out there and go sell something. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.